But thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, I'm Maxine, I founded Polka Pants, but I'm kind of here today not really to talk about Polka Pants, but more sort of my journey and my two careers, and how they kind of, morphed together, one in food and one in fashion to sort of lead me to where I am today. But a little bit about me. I grew up in Australia on an avocado farm, so I was sort of having smashed avocado on toast before Instagram. Sort of made it cool. I've got two sisters, a twin sister and an older sister, who will come into my story a little bit later on, and parents, mum and dad. And my parents and my family play a really important aspect in my relationship with food. And we love nothing more than sort of eating and drinking together and entertaining. Cooking is sort of what we do best together, and weekends are spent, thumbing through magazines and cookbooks and shopping at farmers markets and cooking, a 5-course meal just because we could. And it's something, that's what I really love about food, and it's sort of my way of, I think a lot of us, showing affection for people, and it's something that has always stuck with me. If there's, a big life event, whether it's good or bad, or if I meet someone that I really like, my first instinct is just like, let me cook for you, let me feed you. And I think, my mum, this comes from my mum a lot. She was born one of 9 in a remote Australia town in Queensland, but in her heart she thinks she's an Italian mama. So we grew up sort of cooking pasta and making risotto and minestrone. And I think whenever I get really nervous or have like a bit of a life wobble, I make myself a huge batch of minestrone, and it instantly, sort of teleports me back to this safe space of like, being in the arms of my mum. But my mum was also important for many reasons, not just my love of food and cooking, but also she was sort of responsible for sowing the seed of fashion into me when I was quite little. So my mum met a friend when I was quite young, in preschool, so like 6, and she was wild, like super into like extreme sports, mostly skydiving. And so my mum started hanging around with her quite a lot, and hanging out at these things called drop zones, which is where people who jump out of planes end up. And my mum was looking at what everyone was wearing, and at the time, women were sort of flying, which is what they call skydiving, in men's suits. And if you can imagine when you jump out of a plane, that high, and you're flying in something really baggy, it's not very safe, and it's not really very aerodynamic. So my mum and her friend started their own company making skydiving suits designed for women. So I guess you can say that's sort of the first point where making Polka Pants was deeply ingrained in my body or my mind. But it was also the first taste of fashion for me, because I would help mum as a 7-year-old sew skydiving suits and screen prints. And so from a really early age, I always kind of had this love of like food and fashion, both like hand in hand together. And then I decided to go to university and study fashion design, because I really wanted to pursue my career in fashion. So I was living with my 2 sisters at the time, and we used to cook every night together and have a lot of dinner parties. And we always, any given night, someone would knock on the door at like 7 p.m. because they knew that we'd be cooking and there'd be a feast. So from any time there'd be like 5 to 25 people on a Tuesday night for dinner, which we loved. But one night after a dinner party, like one of our friends started scribbling on a napkin about the meal and how it made her feel. And then another friend drew like a really literal drawing of the plate of food. And we're like, oh, this is really interesting. And so it became a tradition around dinner parties that people would draw or paint or illustrate sort of their interpretation of the meal and what it meant to them. And my sisters and I thought that this was quite an interesting concept. And so we began collecting the recipes and illustrations, and we decided to make a food blog, which 15 years ago was still pretty new. And so we launched it, and it was called The Cookery Cook. And so it sort of grew from just a blog into like a proper website. So we had interviews with artists and illustrations and recipes and videos. But at that point I finished studying and decided to really try and pursue my dreams and working in fashion, and I moved to New York. And I ended up landing a job at Chanel, which was amazing. I think I emailed everyone who I'd ever met from my Maxine Thompson at ChanelUSA.com email address. But it was great, and while I was in New York, I was like, writing, I was still contributing to the blog, and I was hosting, dinner parties and cooking for friends, and it was always when I was cooking that I was happier and I felt a lot more comfortable. Like my job at Chanel was great, but I wasn't doing anything creative. My sort of main role was to handle VIP clients, so make sure the champagne was cold and there was enough, sequined, shoes for them to buy if they wanted to. But it was at that point we got approached to turn the blog into a cookbook. And so I was musical at Chanel and decided that rather than just being three sisters who like to cook, it would be a really good idea if one of us was a qualified chef. So I traded in my power suit from Chanel and got some chef whites and went to the French Culinary Institute in New York. And I loved it. I had just the best time. I was there for 6 months, and you do 7 in the morning till I think 3 in the afternoon, and I went from there to a restaurant. And I had an absolute blast. But finishing school, and I couldn't find anyone to sponsor me or anyone to marry me for a visa in America, so I had to come back to Australia, and I moved. You'd think going from New York, you'd move to Sydney or Melbourne, and I went to Hobart in Tasmania, which is tiny. It's probably the size of Greenpoint in Brooklyn. But I worked in this amazing restaurant called Ethos, and it's like zero waste, and we only used local source forage produce. So it was incredible, and it really changed the way that I cook and the way that I look at food. But more importantly, it was in this restaurant where I sort of had the first idea for Polka pants. Because this was about 8 years ago, so it was sort of at the time when kitchens were becoming more open. Sorry, I think it's live. Kitchens were becoming more open, and chefs were becoming more of an interactive part of the dining experience. And so I was working there, and one of our jobs is we had to also run out to the tables and talk to the diners about the dish and the ingredients used and the processes. And I always just felt really uncomfortable. It was the worst part. It was worse than a deep clean on a Saturday night. I hated talking to people because I just didn't feel like I was comfortable in what I was wearing. Trousers rolled up 7 times, and I'd run out and hook a pocket on the table, and it was just a bit of a mess. And so I tried buying jeans to cook in, and they were too hot, and I tried cooking in leggings, and they were too clingy, and I just thought there had to be a better way. And so having a background in fashion design, I've been so excited to have on my day off make myself a pair of trousers and see how they went at work. And so I wore them in on Tuesday morning, and I was like, oh my god, this is an absolute godsend. I can move, I can jump up and down on tables, I can bend, and if I run to a customer, I feel a lot better. And so I kind of put this in the back of my mind, and I was like, oh, I wonder if this is someone else has a problem, or if it's just me being a total diva. But I just kind of put it in the back of my mind and cooked through that in Ethos for a bit longer, and then after about 9 months, I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I decided, and I just had this idea in the back of my head, and I really wanted to sort of push it and see if it was something. So I moved to the UK about 6 years ago, and started doing some market research to see if anyone else had this problem, or if it was just me being a diva. And I spoke to a lot of chefs and butchers and bakers, and it turned out that thankfully they had a problem too. So I knew that I wanted to develop a product, and obviously to develop a product is really time consuming and really expensive. And I knew that if I had a conventional chef job, I wouldn't be able to sort of do that. So I took a job working as a private chef in a corporate bank, which was great because I worked from 7 till 3 Monday to Friday, so I had the evenings and the weekends off. And it was also the perfect test platform because I worked with 2 other people in the kitchen who both happened to be women. So it was really great. We were all different sizes and body types and styles. So I made loads of different variations of the trousers in different colours and fabrics and zips in different places and pockets in different places and different leg lengths. And we tested them for about 1.5 years until we arrived at the final product. And so then we sent them out to a few well-known chefs around London and launched properly in February 2006. So it's actually our 3rd birthday this year. So I want to thank FoodX for throwing us a birthday party in February because it's today. Yeah, so it's been really nice. It's just crazy. I didn't, when I started my journey, I never really set out to create my own company or disrupt the industry. But I think, it's been really nice to sort of put all my degrees together, and my father's really happy because I haven't wasted any of them. But, I think it's really important. Like, I remember going for a job interview in New York, and a guy looked at my CV, I think as I was trying to stay, and manically applying for every job that would give me a visa. And he sort of looked at it, studied fashion design, and then looked at it, trained to be a chef. And just looked at me and was like, how do you expect to ever make a career out of those two things? Like, basically just told me to do something else, and my life was a mess. But it's funny, if I listened to him, I wouldn't sort of be here today. But I think it's just, one of the things, I guess I wanted to talk about. And I think it's just, it's really important for you guys, whatever careers that you do or that you want to do, I think, there's no ever set career path, and I don't think it matters if you want to have a total career change, because everything that you've done in the past, will inevitably help you in the future. And if I can make pants, imagine what you guys can do.